Fueled by Deathcast.
This incredible Kickstarter that you guys are a part of for Critical Role.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's like so cool and surprising. I mean, I've been like a lifelong D&D player since I was like 9 years old, and I've known those guys because they're voice actors, right? And many of them have done voices for us, and Sam Riegel has directed so many cartoons for us. But yeah, I kind of have been aware of their stream since the beginning, and I've kind of been talking to them about it for years, like probably 2.5 years, and we started developing it maybe like 1.5 years ago. And, you know, when they were like, hey, do you think that we could do a Kickstarter? I was like, yeah, you know, everybody who asked me that, because we get asked that a lot.
I bet.
We've been involved with a couple of them. And, you know, it never works out the way that you think,
right.
You know, and it's always a huge, it's a weird thing, right? And a lot of it's like the audience, you know, it's like the people who watch cartoons, I was like, in the past, I think have been less informed on like how long it takes and how much it costs to make a cartoon. And I was afraid there might be a backlash if we asked for the money to make a whole cartoon, because people would be like, hey, you have a studio. Why are you asking us for money? And so we asked for like, you know, to do one special. And we're like, man, maybe if we're lucky, we'll get this. It's a tall order. It's a tall ask. And now we're in the position where we just crested it, where we're definitely doing a 10-episode season. It's crazy, like, to be able to do a crowd-funded season of a TV show at a reasonable budget. It's insane. Like, I'm so happy. It's going to be bananas.
Yeah, that's so incredible. And kind of, can you talk a little bit about, for our listeners, what Critical Role actually is? Because it didn't start out as an animation thing.
Oh. No, it didn't. I mean, now it's only just starting. Yeah, it's like, you know, I'm sure your audience is familiar with Twitch.
Yep.
If you're not, then it's like, it's a service where you can watch people. Mostly it's about playing video games, right?
Right.
But it's also, in the past few years, expanded out to people playing all different kinds of games, right? Role-playing games and board games and whatever kind of games, you know, streaming their experiences. And I think Critical Role hit this sweet spot of like a little bit nostalgia for D&D, a little bit of, you know, the 5th edition coming out. I guess it started with Pathfinder, you know, which is a D&D-like game, you know. So they started playing with Pathfinder and then got into playing D&D, but both like fantasy role-playing games. And I think, you know, the fact that they're voice actors and they're talented at like coming up with characters and character voices makes theirs like way more entertaining than just like so-called normal people playing D&D. If you watch me play D&D, it's not nearly as entertaining as it is watching these guys, right?
Right.
But I think the big thing about Twitch, right, is like D&D used to be something that, you know, your older brother or your uncle or your weird friend or the librarian, somebody had to teach you, right? It's really hard to get it just from reading the books, right? So there was like a barrier of entry that was like you had to know somebody who already played it. And, you know, a lot of the people who are attracted initially to role-playing gaming maybe aren't people who have like a big network of friends and stuff, right? But now you could just watch Twitch and you could watch them play it, and then you know how to play it. You learn how from watching people play it on the internet.
Yeah.
So I think D&D had an incredible year last year. You have to ask them. I think the last 2 years have been gangbusters for them, and I think a large part of it is because of Twitch and because people, you know, it's just you've like lowered that barrier of entry considerably. And so I don't know if that answered your question.
No,
I kind of went off on
it totally did. And it's so exciting because like something like this, which is born from, you know, this new space of watching people play games and being invested in that. And that has spawned, you know, these voice actors to not only have a good following there, but I mean, a comic book and, you know, fan art and all this other stuff. And then the idea comes out, well, why don't we try a cartoon? And I think it's so cool that, you know, like you said, it wasn't necessarily some big conglomeration coming in and, like let's throw out Disney into there, or something, and being like, we're going to make this, It was from the creators being like, if there really is a fan base, would you guys want to help us do this? And you guys crushed the goal by 1,000,000%. It was amazing.
Yeah, it's crazy how that came about too. And we did develop it and pitch it, and there was a buyer on the table who was interested in buying it, but the guys really wanted to do a high production value show, and the budget on the table for what we were interested wasn't quite there.
Right.
And I give them a lot of credit for sticking to their guns, because a bird in the hand, of having like somebody willing to buy your show is a tough thing to walk away from,
Yeah, for sure. But it's turned out successful. We're now going to get a 10-part series out of this, which is absolutely amazing. And from someone who, in your position, I mean, you started Titmouse Inc. and you run this incredible animation studio. Do you feel like this creator-owned Kickstarter world that we live in, do you think it's helpful or harmful to the industry?
Oh, I think it's super helpful, but it's weird. Like this thing that we're doing is like 1 in a million. Like this is not a business model to do Kickstarters
right.
for like entire series of TV shows. I think it's like, was it like Veronica Mars and Mystery Science Theater and this thing, are pretty much the ones that have been able to do it. So. It's like, hey, for doing a short, for getting started out in your career, I mean, it's such a different landscape than when I was coming up. You can make cartoons, just put them on YouTube, and, all the free time that you have when you're young, when you're mussing around, in high school or whatever, you can actually make cartoons, and there's an outlet for people to see them. And, if your goal is, a few $100 or a few $1,000 to do a short, I think there is a viable model for this. I think anything that lowers the barrier to entry is great, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, it's like everybody gets a chance. It's a more like democratic system. I mean, Hollywood still is, I mean, that like who thing is like so very true, because, it's an industry, there's people in charge of like what gets on the air or whatever you want to call it these days on people's services, streaming services, but you have to be able to back it up with being able to make stuff. Now there's just like a broader net that people can cast to find new talent. I mean, I love it.